And we're also initiating several Section 301 and other investigations to protect our country.
The timing of all of this, welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we have just hours after my previous video where I was talking about those street fennel tariffs that Donald Trump has put on America, those being susceptible to being repealed by the Supreme Court. Well, the ruling has come down. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we've got the Globe and Mail posting this. Out of nowhere, Canada has become poorer than Alabama. How is that possible? If you're not aware, Alabama is one of the poorest states in America. I have no idea how this could happen. Yeah, I wonder why. On the flip side, we have the Woke City News Toronto posting this. New study finds Prime Minister Mark Carney has broad coalition of support among Canadians for his economic plan. No, he doesn't. We don't want his net zero agenda that will destroy Canada. It's funny, Tokyo posting the article I just showed you here. We also have Mark Wiseman posting this. He has began his role as ambassador of Canada to the US, posting a photo here with Donald Trump. So what will come from this, we don't know. Now, moving into the breaking news here, Donald Trump announcing that the Supreme Court has struck down his tariffs. And what's going to happen here is this going to create a flurry of confusion across Canadians, especially just average Canadians who don't really pay attention to the news.
Well, we have some breaking news for you surrounding Donald Trump's tariffs. CTV's Jeremy Sharon joins us now with the details. Jeremy, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Renee, look, a long-awaited result from the U.S. Supreme Court on the use of IEEPA tariffs by U.S. President Donald Trump. The court has ruled 6-3 in favor of the fact that the use of Donald Trump's tariffs and the imposition of those tariffs was unlawful. And so that means 6 of the judges ruling with the court's ruling to deem the imposition of these tariffs unlawful. 3 of them providing dissenting opinions, saying that they do believe that they were lawful. But ultimately, this means the Supreme Court is ruling against the use of U.S. President Donald Trump's IEEPA tariffs. Those are the tariffs that many know here in Canada as related tariffs. Renee?
Street fennel, we can't use that word on here. And what's also notable about the judges voting on this 6-3 is, in general, the judges there are more conservative than liberal down there. So Donald Trump was really pissed off about that in the ruling.
35% on all goods not covered by CUSMA, 10% on energy products. These were imposed early on in the trade war by U.S. President Donald Trump as a means to address what he called a fentanyl emergency at the U.S. border. Canada implemented a bunch of measures at the border to address some of U.S. President Donald Trump's concerns, but he has insisted that the fentanyl crisis is still a national emergency, and that has been the crux, the justification for these IEEPA tariffs that have been imposed on Canada as well as other countries. So the Supreme Court now ruling against U.S. President Donald Trump and his, implementation of these tariffs while using that emergency to underpin these tariffs.
So he can no longer use that, but he has other metrics here. But first, we're just going to get into a little bit about the judges.
An interesting array of justices here. In the majority, ruling that the tariffs are illegal is Chief Justice Roberts, Justice Gorsuch, and Justice Amy Coney Barrett, 3 conservatives who teamed up with the 3 liberal justices, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson, to rule these tariffs unconstitutional. The dissenters are Justices Thomas, Alito, and Kavanaugh. And the base.
So 3 conservative judges voted with Donald Trump and 3 conservative judges voted with the liberals. So Trump's pissed off at 3 of them, essentially.
The basis for the ruling is this. Congress, not the president, Congress typically holds the tariff power. Now, Congress passed this law back in 1977 called the International Economic Emergencies Act. And Donald Trump tried to use that law to say, well, I'm declaring an international economic emergency, therefore I'm imposing tariffs. But the majority here said, no, that law does not authorize you to impose tariffs. And no, there is not a valid international economic emergency here. So the end result, and we are still going through this, but the end result is that Donald Trump's tariffs have been struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. But really important point I want to make, Donald Trump has said, various White House officials have said, if he loses on this basis, he will try to re-implement other tariffs through other.
So we'll stop it right there because Donald Trump has already done this. So he has already put on new tariffs, and that's why this is going to get so messy with liberal voters in Canada, because they're going to think at first, oh, Trump removed the tariffs. So is this going to create confusion now, thinking, okay, then that means Mark Carney can go down there and negotiate easier because those tariffs are gone. It's removed some of Donald Trump's power. But really, in reality, he's just not using the IEEPA tariffs, the ones he's put on 35% on all goods that are not protected under CUSMA, which is 85% of the products that are wrapped under CUSMA. And then there's 10% of the street fentanyl tariffs. He can't apply those anymore because of the court ruling, but he can use other tariffs that have timelines to them. So we got Kirk posting this, as he mentioned, it's section 122, section 232, and 301, him posting Trump's tweet here. And without going through all of this stuff here, he mentions, so some of them here, federal statutes authorize the president to impose tariffs that might justify most, if not all, of the tariffs issued in this case. Those statutes are, and then it goes through section 232, 121, 201, 301, etc. And then he says here 10% global tariff. So that is what he has done here. He has applied a new 10% global tariff to every country in the world. So this just muddies up the negotiations once again. Mark Carney had his opportunity. He should have came out right out of the gate, made a deal with Donald Trump. There was a couple periods in there where there was some kerfuffle with the UK. Carney could have swept in. There was a great opportunity to get a deal. Obviously, we know that's not going to happen now because Carney's a greedy man who wants a majority government. Him stepping up to lead the Liberal Party was never about serving his country. It even seems weird to say that, his country. How much time has he really spent in Canada in the last 10 years?
Today, I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122 over and above our normal tariffs already being charged. And we're also initiating several Section 301 and other investigations to protect our country from unfair trading practices of other countries and companies. A new record. We set a record every time.
So essentially, he's using this new method of putting in tariffs. They only can go for 150 days or 5 months. That'll bridge him out to the midterm votes. They have midterm votes halfway through a president's 4-year term in America. The different system down there, they have the House, they have Congress. Essentially, he'll probably lose some of his power in the midterms. We're going to jump back to CTV here, talking about the 10% tariffs.
The Supreme Court has ruled against, but it's very harsh words for those justices. You know, one line in particular that sticks out, that he couldn't care less if the justices who ruled against him showed up to his State of the Union address next week. Now, there's a lot to unpack. In particular, and as expected, we heard that Donald Trump is going to use a number of different avenues, and one of them right away said that he is going to sign an executive order later today to institute a 10% global tariff across the board. That's under Section 122. That's under the U.S. Trade Act of 1974. Those tariffs, at least under that act, can be instituted for 150 days for now, until an extension, if they wanted one, the U.S. administration, that would take congressional approval. So I think that's what.
Yeah, so that extension would have to go through Congress. You'd have to get the votes on that. This is going to muddy things up because Canadians are going to hear, oh, the tariffs were removed. But then they're also going to hear, oh, there's new 10% tariffs. In reality, there's 35% tariff getting removed, as well as the 10%, but then a new 10%. So essentially, it's a negative of 35%. But Trump could come out with another one of these more temporary tariffs. I think this is just going to stir up the elbows up movement once again, because the media is not going to portray this correctly. They're going to spin this to make it more scary so they can help Mark Carney get a majority government.
Lots to break down. Let's bring in CTV News U.S. political analyst Eric Hem and Sharon Carr, CTV News political analyst as well. Eric, I want to start with you.
Political analyst Sharon Carr. Yeah, okay. She's just there to push Mark Carney's talking points. She's not a political analyst.
You know, your takeaways from that, I think, you know, not unexpected for Donald Trump and some of the rhetoric that he was using, but take me through your thoughts.
Well, we knew that the president had other contingencies, and we knew that he would use them. I didn't expect that he would actually announce it today. But yes, the Section 122, that will now go into effect. That's an across-the-board 10% tariff. But again, it's only for 150 days, and he will.
I'm kind of surprised Eric Ham said that. I was expecting Trump to come back with more tariffs in another way if those tariffs got struck down, because it makes Trump look weak that his tariffs were struck down. So obviously he's just going to strike out right again and show he has strength and power in his position. I think this was very predictable.
Need congressional approval to go beyond that. Now, this is an election year, so it is highly unlikely that lawmakers are going to actually approve a tariff, which is essentially a tax on Americans. And so that's something that's not going to happen. this year by lawmakers. Of course, we know that House Joint Resolution 72 is already in the Senate. That's a resolution that was passed in the House last week. Some Republicans joined with Democrats to move that legislation, and now it goes before the Senate. I do believe that with this ruling by the Supreme Court, that will give additional Republican lawmakers who have not wanted to challenge the president to actually support that resolution. And so I think we could see even more bipartisan support for that resolution, which, of course, we know repeals tariffs on Canada.
Right. And again, that's the one that the Canadians in particular have been looking for on top of, some of the other moves clearly that the U.S. administration is making. Sharon, let me get your overall general thoughts too as well and what we heard from Donald Trump here in the last, who spoke for, I want to say, just a little bit over half an hour and answering a number of questions.
That was definitely a press conference that I don't think anyone was expecting to come out today the way it did. Listen, this just solidifies Canada's position that these tariffs were unjustified. And as much as these are threats that he's making, he does have extremely low approval ratings right now. I think he's at 36 or 38%. So there's a lot at play here. Criticizing the institutions of the Supreme Court, I don't think is going to help him. And this is typical in the language that he uses. But what he's doing is he's giving countries like Canada further ammo to ensure that they are domesticating their own sovereign supply for everything, because he is creating so much uncertainty globally. And whether or not this comes to fruition, he is going to sign an executive document today. But again, this is not going to necessarily work out to the favor he thinks it is, specifically if there's going to be bipartisan support. But this just, again, further solidifies Canada's position that these were unjustified tariffs to begin with.
Interesting, the language he used there, further giving more ammo to Canada. Yeah, it's more ammo for Mark Carney to get his majority here, depending on how they spin this. And we know how they're going to do it here. Something else to note here, the judges did not rule on whether the money needs to be paid back. They didn't even touch that, which is ridiculous. So Trump mentioned in his press conference, they're going to be in the courts now for 2 years, 5 years. He said a couple different numbers there, whether they have to pay back billions of dollars. So it just creates this big muddy mess now. Further ahead in this broadcast, they show LeBlanc's tweet here. United States Supreme Court decision reinforces Canada's position that the IEEPA tariffs imposed by the United States are unjustified, while Canada has the best trade deal with the United States of any partner. It's funny, they got to push out these talking points. Mark Carney has been caught lying 2 or 3 times, stating that he's got that best deal, even though he didn't make that deal. Chronic liar as usual. We recognize that critical work lies ahead to support Canadian businesses and workers who remain affected by the Section 232 tariffs on steel, aluminum, and autos. So that's the key point here, is those tariffs are not going anywhere. It's just the street fennel ones and the non-CUSMA ones. But steel, aluminum, and autos still affected. This really doesn't change a lot in Canada at this point. It's interesting too. They're showing this post by LeBlanc mentioning the critical work ahead to support Canadian businesses. And what does Sharon Kerr have to say?
Trump wants a reaction. That is what he thrives off of. It creates more controversy, and that's not the style that Prime Minister Carney is going to take. So whether or not he comes out with a statement, if he does, I think it'll be fairly neutral. We do have these CUSMA negotiations that are upcoming. And again, time is on our side. I'm sorry, what? Time is on our side? This is spoken by someone who was, maybe still is, well paid by the Liberal Party. Time is not on the side of workers who have lost their jobs 6 or 8 months ago. Time is not on our side of people who had to shut down their businesses during the world event, people who lost their businesses this year, mortgage delinquencies, bankruptcies, people can't afford food, people are living in tents. Time is not on our side. This is such a ridiculous statement for her to make. Sharon Kerr does not speak for the people of Canada, period. Moving ahead, we've got employment insurance benefits nearing peak pandemic levels. That's right. People have lost their jobs. People can't find jobs. People are giving up looking for jobs. And we've got here 569,000 Canadians receiving regular employment insurance benefits in December 2025. This won't last forever. I went on this once. I got about 8 months and then that was it. It says year over year basis, the number of Canadians receiving regular EI benefits was up by 81,000 or 16.7%. I'm not surprised. The economy is absolutely terrible under the Liberals. This madness must end. These people have to wake up and vote Conservative if they ever want to have a better life. With that said, we've got Melanie Joly misconstruing the data here, fudging the numbers to make it look better for the Liberals. As Mr. Bench pointing out here, Canada added 84,000 government jobs. You're going to see her brag about our jobs versus American jobs. And as Mr. Bench pointing out here, Canada added 84,000 government jobs, while the Trump administration cut 237,000 government jobs. That's where the delta is here. The Trump administration is cutting government spending, which is a good thing. Of course, the Liberals trying to take advantage.
If you think about it, last year, we created more jobs than in the United States. Indeed. We created 189,000 jobs, while the U.S., 10 times our economy, created 181,000 jobs. So our plan is working, and our goal is to be in control, because there are lots of things we cannot control, but there are lots of things we can control. And so our plan is to protect jobs, to create jobs, and to attract talent and investment.
These people are just a bunch of liars. Like, it just fudge the data, trick Canadians. Like, it's just all very disingenuous. And someone posting the manufacturing as a share of GDP in Canada here. And yeah, this is just falling off a cliff. Of course it is. And here we have real GDP per capita in the OECD. And where's Canada? It's this red one at the very bottom. Sorry, not the very bottom. Luxembourg is below us. And where's America? The green line way up here. Of course it is. Only an idiot would equate adding bureaucratic drones to an already bloated government is a good thing. Yeah, all those government jobs does not help our economy. It does not create extra value in our society.